Now, this is definitely a video that I felt I would have out closer to the launch of Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, but something interesting happened because before the game launched, there were no reviews on Metacritic or OpenCritic. After the game launched, on launch day, there were no reviews of Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, so I felt maybe there was an issue. Maybe Square Enix didn't send out review copies. What is going on with this game? Now, the only review that we got for Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince was the Famitsu review. They gave it, I think, a 36 out of 40, so they gave it a good score. People liked it. Obviously, Japan is huge on Dragon Quest, and the game is selling incredibly well. It actually outdid a mainline Final Fantasy game in Japan in the most recent Famitsu sales, selling well over 340,000 units, not including digital copies. So that's really good when it comes to a spin-off on the Nintendo Switch this late into the life. So I was thinking, what's going on with here in the West? Why isn't there any reviews for this game? And honestly, I haven't found out the reason outside of here in the West, people don't care about Dragon Quest Monsters. If this was a mainline game, if this was Dragon Quest 12, or if this was Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, people would be all over this because Dragon Quest 11S Echoes of an Elusive Age has plenty of reviews on the Nintendo Switch, and other Dragon Quest titles have reviews on other platforms. So it's not like people here don't like Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest does well. Obviously still more popular and sells really good in Japan, but still popular enough to get reviews done. But this game, for some reason, had nothing. Well, here we are at this point, and we've got 9 reviews on the game. So if you haven't decided whether to buy the game or not, we're gonna go ahead and break down all of the good reviews, the bad reviews, and what's going on with this game, and kind of circle back over to my kerfuffle. Can I say kerfuffle? My situation that I had with Dragon Quest Monsters, with my first impressions compared to my update video that I did when I put far more time into it, and we're going to compare that to the reviews that are out there because I think this is a very interesting game. But before we get into all that, what's good everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch JRPG videos, live streams, and more first as soon as they drop. Now let's go ahead and jump right into it here. Let's talk about this because we have 9 reviews, like I stated, 6 positive reviews, 3 mixed reviews. Mixed reviews are anything, I think 74 and down, no red reviews, so no like 50s or anything like that. So that's definitely good. 6 positive, that's about 75 and up. And we're also gonna go over something that I usually never go over, but I think it might be good in this case. So we're going to talk about that. Make sure you stay tuned because I think I have an interesting take on this one. So let's talk about the reviews. We're going to go from the top to the bottom. There's only 6 positive and 3 mixed, so it's not going to take us too long to kind of see what's going on here. So the game overall has a 77 average, which is good. That's positive for the most part. That's not a bad overall score at all. Now, digitally downloaded gave it a 9 out of 10 and had this to say: Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is an exceptional return for one of Square Enix's most underappreciated properties, with Pokemon going through a rare period where it's not meeting nearly universal acclaim. Perhaps this is the big opportunity for the series to finally break through, some 25 years after it first launched on the Game Boy Color. All right, next up is from Screen Rant. They gave it a 9 out of 10 and simply said, surprisingly chill, but also full of surprises. Nintendoros gave it an 8.5 out of 10 and had this to say: Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is a very complete monster capture game with a nostalgic story that invites us to revisit the world of Dragon Quest IV. Although it lacks too much complexity, it will please fans of the series. And I think that's going to tie into something that I really want to talk about afterwards. Now, Noisy Pixel gave it a 8 out of 10 and had this to say: Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is a worthy resurgence for this beloved spin-off series. While the messy narrative pacing and poor frame rate bring the adventure down a few notches, the addictive and rewarding gameplay loop with player freedom at its core more than offsets those flaws. You can spend countless hours making your ideal team to your heart's content and engaging with the post-game content after clearing the main story. Further, Dragon Quest IV fans will get more out of this journey than most, but newcomers who exhibit patience can still find themselves invested and enthralled. Ultimately, Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince proves that the series can prosper, and with the promise that they'll continue, we're excited to see where it goes from here. And I think that really makes sense, especially with the Dragon Quest IV ties, because you see the main hero from there as well. And I think it's really cool that they actually put that in there, because it makes it feel more of a shared type of world when you do stuff like that, when you revisit some of those different past games. Now, Atomics gave it an 8 out of 10 and had this to say: if you want to know this sub-franchise in which the protagonists are the monsters of this universe, it is definitely the first good step to follow, given that the previous installments can be considered lost. Next up is an 8 out of 10 from the 6 axis, and this is the last positive score here, or 8 and above. And they said, Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince isn't reinventing the wheel or changing the way we view the monster catching genre, but it is a huge amount of fun and offers a lot of playtime for those who want to spend their time just seeing what kinds of weird and wonderful creatures they can end up playing with. The systems are clear and easy to grasp, the voice acting is great, the music is incredible, and it's just a very fun game, and I have to absolutely agree with that. Obviously, some of the stuff that the previous review said, Noisy Pixel had a fantastic, I think, video review. I watched that, where, yeah, they did show off some of those issues when it comes to the performance, which we will get to a bit more here. Now, Nintendo Life, who does a great job with reviewing games overall on the Switch, they've definitely been super consistent, and they gave it a 7 out of 10, saying this: Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince is an enjoyable monster-catching RPG that combines charming visuals with addictive gameplay to make for a generally gripping experience, making it feel like the long wait since the last entry to leave Japan has been worth it. Even so, the general lack of ambition and struggles with performance issues hold it back from greatness. It's very good, but it's also definitely got its issues. If you're at all a fan of Dragon Quest or monster-catching RPGs, we suggest you pick this one up, though perhaps wait a few months to see if Square can sort out the worst of its performance issues. And I think that's kind of like the big thing here that kind of caused me for a loop at the beginning, at least with some of the other oddities of the game. The performance hitching is interesting because if you're just having a little bit of lag and slowdown, that's fine, but it almost seems like it's systematic with the hitch stop, like the hitch stop, the hitch stops that this game does have. So if Square Enix can just give us a little bit more, I think it would drastically improve the game, despite the graphics not being so good, despite there being a lot less detail in the environment and other things. I think it can actually improve the experience quite a bit. I think a 7 out of 10 is more than fair from Nintendo Life as well. All right, next up, we've got the 6 out of 10s. We've got 2 of them here, starting off with But Why Though? And they said, Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince offers a serviceable and sometimes fun narrative and gameplay. The overall experience is unfortunately bogged down by its performance issues and the lack of simple yet essential features. Now, Hobby Consolas, this is the last review that we're going to talk about here before I get into the other thing that I felt was really interesting. Hobby Consolas with the 6 out of 10 and said this: Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince has a deep combat and monster breeding system that can be addictive if you are willing to overlook the very low quality of nearly everything else. Graphics, sound, story, game loop. Only recommended for those looking for an alternative to Pokemon. So I think that if you look at the bottom scores all the way to top scores, not trying to make excuses for my terrible first impressions of the game, but there's absolutely some things that kind of line up here. Some of the positives when it comes to all the different monsters and the variety and some of the depth there, but also the negatives when it comes to the graphics and the performance and some of the simplicity overall once you kind of get the hang of things. So I think it's a mix. There's definitely a market for this type of game. You see positive scores, you see a number of 8s and even a couple 9s here, but some of the issues definitely hold it back. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about here was the user score. And you guys know I don't really bring up user scores too much because there's so many people that simply just, bait and simply just review bomb, and the user score system can just be terrible overall. People just go there to trash a game. But I think that when it comes to smaller games where people really aren't worried about the console war, just don't care at all, especially a Dragon Quest spinoff, which is not as popular as other franchises, this is when you can actually get some quality or solid user scores, or at least an idea, because right now at this point there's only 67 user scores. That's it. There's not that many people that are submitting user scores, and it has a 9.1 average on the user score. Now, back in the day, I think it was GamePro, they used to put up this thing thing called tilt. And anytime that you add tilt, it could be a user in terms of how they feel, personally them, how they feel or how much they like a certain thing or a genre, and that can affect the score. And I think that with a game like this, where it's such a niche or more hardcore style of game for the fans out there with tons of hidden little things, if you know about Dragon Quest IV and the characters and the world, it creates a better tilt and a better game overall for you, where you can maybe look past a couple other things because the other things with the game are so engaging or great. So to me, I find it to be fascinating that the user score is so high here, and I've heard so many people, especially those on my first impressions, that put blocks of text telling me why I was wrong and were very nice about it. So I want to say thank you to everybody with that. But overall, if you look at the user scores, there are 59 positive scores. That is a 75 and up. 59, that is 88% of the breakdown here. Mixed scores, there's 6, so that's 9%, and then there's 2 negative scores, so that's 3%. And overall, like I said, it's pretty cool. Now you got a bunch of people putting up 10s and different things like that, and I'm not gonna go through all the different user scores. I just found it fascinating that the game, in terms of the fans, are seeming to really react very well to this game. Now let's just talk about this overall when it comes to the game, because I've put a lot more time into it even after my video that I made, and I can see both sides when it comes down to it. I can see why somebody would rate this in the 6 out of 10 range, and then I can see why somebody might rate it in the 9 range or so. I don't think that it can get a 10 simply because the performance, man. The performance of the game is just not good enough for me to give it a 10. I think that if the performance was just a little bit better handled, or the graphics were better in conjunction with that, then I can look past a few input lag or, you know, delay or lag here and there. But the constant hitching over and over and over, in addition to the poor visuals overall, are kind of something to where I can't give it a 10. However, I think that anybody that gave it that, that's fine. If you feel that your tilt is so good with the monsters and the battling and the ranked and all the different type of stuff, then I understand that. I'm not ready to give it a complete score at this point because I have not completely beat the game and done everything in there. But I do feel, once again, that anywhere between a 6 out of 10 and a 9 out of 10 would be okay. Now 9 would be a little bit too high for me right now where I'm at, but I guess if I just had to, I'd probably say like a 7. I think that Nintendo Life's review was pretty good. 7 or 8 or 7.5. It's really going to depend on how you feel about some of the performance stuff in the game. Does the monsters and the battling and the collecting and the story and the online and the post game, which is also really good from what I've heard, does all of that override some of those things? And yeah, for some people it's going to, for others it's not. But overall, I think that finally getting some reviews in is absolutely a good thing. I just think that it's crazy that there wasn't anything at this point. And overall, I think that I can say that yes, Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince is a good game. I was once again wrong when it comes to my first initial video that I put out on the game, but I think that once again, when I went back in, now that I'm seeing more people talk about it, I'm understanding the gameplay a bit more. This is not a series that I have a ton of experience with. It's cool to actually see what makes this game tick and some of the reviews and what people are saying, because overall, this is going to be a game that more people are probably going to look at, especially once we start getting more copies in when it comes to physical. I think word of mouth is going to be really good on this game. I think that the users, as you guys can see here, are absolutely showing out for this game and saying, hey, it's really good, and rating it well. I do want to look on OpenCritic though, just to see if everything is the same there. Okay, so I did look it up on OpenCritic as well, and it has pretty much the same review score. It's a 77 average, so strong rating according to OpenCritic. 50% of their critics recommend, which is interesting there. And they have 8 reviews and pretty much all of the same type of reviews. There are a couple different ones, but for the most part, it's the same reviews overall. I think Screen Rant has a 4.5 out of 5 stars there. Hardcore Gamer has a 3.5 out of 5. We didn't go over those. And I think maybe Atomics, they gave it an 8 out of 10. So there are a number of different reviews, but for the most part, everything is pretty much the same. Now, what I would love for Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, it would be really cool, once again, for a patch to help things out. But if they don't do that, if there was a Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game, I think that would be really good to help just breathe more life into it. It's a late Nintendo Switch title anyway, and if they got a little bit of an upgraded version of this game out there, I think that would be great. Although, if you look at the game, there's definitely more room that they could have done on the Nintendo Switch. All things considered, if you look at it, because we have stuff like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, we have stuff like Tears of the Kingdom, we have Shin Megami Tensei 5, we have all these other games that look way better. Obviously, Dragon Quest 11S looks way better, but clearly this game does not have the budgets of those big games. This is a much smaller budget game, but I think that if you gave them a bit more extra horsepower with this, if you're going to keep it just on Nintendo, I think they'd be able to use that raw power to help them out when it comes down to it. So I'm hoping that we get a little bit of an update on the Nintendo Switch in terms of a patch, in addition to an updated version of the game on Nintendo's next hardware. But what do you guys think about all this when it comes to Dragon Quest Monsters the Dark Prince? Are you enjoying the game? Have you picked it up? Can you even find a physical copy of the game? Square Enix is having trouble stocking it in Japan. Might be a bit better over in the West. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Dragon Quest Monsters and RPG videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.